Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. As you can see in the picture today, let's start the story of this is the third part of a story where DxD universe reacts to betrayed villainous Issei. Now let's get into part 3. Anyways, before we begin, I would like to bring some more guests. Revan snapped his fingers, bringing in 2 additional guests. The first was described to be a woman whose beauty exuded that of many. She had creamy skin that seemed softer than wool, had deep blue eyes and a beautiful expression that exuded serenity, and she gave a mystical aura. She had long light blue hair that moved freely until it reached her waist. It looked silky and shiny, which added to the beauty of her body. This was Tiamat, the Chaos Karma Dragon in human form. The second person was described to be a tall, handsome man wearing a black coat with a long mixture of black and blonde hairs, as well as heterochromatica eyes where his right eye is gold, and his left eye is black and he has pointed ears. This was Crom Cruch, the Crescent Circle Dragon in human form. Where are we?" Tiamat asked in surprise as Revan walked to the 2 and greeted them. "Welcome, Chaos Karma Dragon Tiamat and Crescent Moon Dragon Chrome. I was the one that brought the 2 of you here." The 2 dragons could feel his aura, which eclipsed that of even Great Red. They knew he had to be treated with respect or there could be a confrontation. Not that Crom minded, he always loved a good battle. "So then, why did you bring us here?" Tiamat asked with curiosity. As she spoke while looking at Ajuka and others, she could easily recognize some familiar faces. "I mean, even they are here, so what is going on?" "Patience, Tiamat, all will be revealed away, but I will give you a small gist of it. You will be watching the alternate version of Issei Hyoudou, the Red Dragon Emperor." Prom was intrigued by this. This meant that the multiverse was real and it existed. While Tiamat seemed to be angry upon hearing the name Red Dragon Emperor, however, she kept her cool in person. She did not let her anger get the better of her. Besides, she couldn't help but respect to Issei, especially for his actions. He was different from what she had heard of him, as Crom asked. "So is there anything else you want to tell us?" Crom spoke as Revan snapped her fingers, internally smirking. They both were surprised by the information they received of the alternate version of Issei and their fates. They were livid by the fact that they were sealed in sacred gears. As they looked at Michael and the angels with anger and fury, they were about to lunge. However, Revan spoke, stopping them. Now, they are not to blame for your counterpart's fate done by Yahweh, the biblical God, so please stand down, alright?" Revan spoke, raising his aura a bit, causing the 2 to be nervous. However, they were still angry as they soon turned their attention to Rias and her peerage of whores. As Tiamat spoke, "You all should be disappointed in yourselves. I may hate drag, but Issei did not deserve what you girls did. We frown on cheats, and I have no respect for any of you." Tiamat spat with utter coldness. As Crom agreed with her words, she then spoke seriously. "I saw him fight tooth and nail for you heathens. I agree with Tiamat here, even I have no respect for you. If I were in Issei's place, I would have RageRevan use you girls as his sex slaves or let you girls die." Crom spoke with no care for the girls, causing them to shiver and cry as Tiamat muttered that was a bit too far. "I could care less, I am an evil dragon after all," Crom responded with a shrug as the 2 walked to their seats. Revan then spoke while snapping his fingers. "Now I will be bringing 2 more guests. I would like it if none of you fight in my theater." Revan snapped his fingers as 2 people came into the theater, all of whom were on guard upon seeing the newer guests that were present. They were Hades and Nyx. Hades was described to be a skeleton god. He had the appearance of a tall skeleton dressed in attire worn by high priests, gives off a creepy aura. While Nyx was described to be a beautiful young woman with the cute face of a child that has long black hair and with pointy ears. She wears a cute frilly dress called Godly Virgin Killer Clothes that has a corset jumper skirt. Her body also gives out a tremendous dark aura. "What are they doing here?" Sergiches asked angrily. He knew those 2 being here could pose some trouble. Ingvald was shivering seeing Nyx here again, who only gave a smile to Ingvald as she spoke. "Well, if it isn't the Leviathan Princess, we meet again. You stay the hell away from her." Mary spoke angrily while bringing herself in front of Ingvald in a protective manner. She had activated both of her sacred gears, which were gauntlets, in her hands. Hades and the other guests recognized them, and the god of the undead spoke. "That's Anov, Clear and Telos Karma, that means you." Hades realized who it was in front of her and growled in anger. She had been eliminating any Grim Reapers that were located in the western side of the globe. "You're Ha-Mari, aren't you?" Hades shouted with anger in his eyes. As Mary looked at him dead in the eye, she knew he had been a problem to her, especially from the news of him supporting the Cows Brigade, and eventually the Alliance of Hell debacle. "You know him, Mary?" The one who asked was Azazel, who was surprised by this. As Mary looked at him and gave a nod, she spoke in a dead serious tone. "Yeah. This guy has been causing problems in the western side of the world, trying to gather allies for his goal while eliminating those that can oppose him. I was one of his targets, and so far, he has failed in taking me down, while at the same time, I make sure he does not cause problems to me in the future. And because of you and your damn brother, you have been nothing short of a thorn in my plans, and today I will eliminate you." Hades was ready to unleash a magical blast, as Mary was ready to activate her balance breaker. Her chances of winning were slim to none, but she was not going to go down without a fight. "Alright, that's enough." Revan clapped his hands, getting between them, as Hades demanded, "Who are you?" And how dare Revan was not having any of it, and slammed him, sending him flying. The god of the underworld crashed to a nearby wall, as he had several of his bones broken. Nyx seemed terrified of the one in front of them, while Mary took a deep breath and deactivated her sacred gears. "There will be no fighting in my theater, so unless you want to fight," Revan looks at Nyx and speaks, "I won't hesitate to put you in your place." Nyx gulped and sat down far away from them. Hades soon recovered and his wounds healed. He was surprised, but he remembered the blow that Revan had given him and made up his mind to not mess with him. Hades sat beside Nyx as Revan spoke. "Had you not began a scuffle, I was going to tell you what I brought the two of you here for." "Why did you even bring us here?" Nyx asked with a tone hinting a bit of fear as Revan responded, "I brought you here to show you the multiverse. It is all real." "I never knew this." Hades spoke with a surprised tone as Revan added, "Now here is also something you don't know." Revan snapped his fingers as they suddenly remembered what happened. However, instead of being angry, they had a smile. They looked at each other knowing that Issei could be a potential ally instead of an enemy, as they started to make plans to get him to their side. Meanwhile, Mary was surrounded by many people, as Serzex asked seriously, "You wield two long Inus, and you decided to not report to anyone. We never could find their original wielders, so how is it possible that you have two of them? You can only be born with one sacred gear. How do you have two then?" Michael asked, causing Mary to glare at him. She remembered a very bad memory. However, before things could escalate, Reagan got in and spoke. "We are way past time for reviewing. Let us begin. After that you can ask any question that you want." The leaders minus Azazel and Isaka looked at Revan for a moment. As they soon dispersed, the latter two were also wondering but had a feeling to not push it. "Alright, let us begin." Issei decided to change his look using Illusion Make, a sacred gear that can transform into Malik, leaving no trace of his former self as well as aura. "Wait, he can shapeshift as well?" Mary asked with a tone full of surprise, to which Revan spoke, "Another of his sacred gears." "But why shapeshift? Why not confront her like regular?" Hades asked with a surprise as many of the guests glare at him, along with those that supported and loved Issei, as Revan answered, "That will be revealed soon enough." Hades and Nyx agreed with this. They were excited by this Issei, a Issei that was clearly malicious, while those from the factions were worried on Lavinia. While Lavinia herself was fearful on what Issei plans for him. One of the primary reasons he did this is due to the fact that Lavinia Rennie was a master magician. It would take her no less than a minute to figure out that her opponent is none other than the Red Dragon Emperor. He did not want to take a risk in such a situation. This was well known that Issei Hyoudou was the Red Dragon Emperor, and Lavinia, if she manages to find out that Issei attacked her, everything he had done will go down for nothing. The red blade was the sacred gear he used that can easily cut through any magic without any problem. He is right, the fact that he did research is really something. Lavinia spoke with dread in her voice. She was afraid and saddened by what Issei has become in this timeline. While those that did not know Lavinia's capabilities were surprised by what she is capable of. And he knows that eliminating you will forward Malik's plans, as Azul added his own forwards as Revan smiled. They knew nothing about who this Issei really is, while the rest of the audience watched with dread of fear. while Nyx and Hades watched with interest. "Buddy, are you sure you want to take down Lavinia Rennie?" Drake asked in worry for his friend, as he spoke. "Don't worry, this will hurt Vala the most. I am definitely going to leave a scar on her." Permanently spoke coldly, spite was indicated in his voice. Valerie looked down in sadness. He wanted to hurt her by hurting her sister figure from this world. She hated her counterpart for pushing this far. The others calmed her down for what was going to happen. "But that is not the only reason you want to eliminate her, right?" Drake asked with a question, what responded. "So you figured it out. Well, it is simple. Lavinia Rennie is one of the few that can use investigation magic. The magic can be a problem to my plans, and she is one of the few magicians that is considered a prodigy, on par with Augusta, who was the predecessor of the Walburga, the former wielder of Incinerate Anthem, which, if I am correct, is imprisoned in Underworld. As for the gear, it isn't Grigori. She can use investigation magic to track Malik down when he attacks again, and I cannot risk the factions finding out who Malik is, at least not yet." Issei spoke in deep thought. Lavinia agreed with Issei's words as she responded with a nod. Intrigued by the amount of research he has done, she feared that he must have a plan for dealing with Lavinia as well. Drake was surprised by this. Issei thought this through. It was like hitting two birds with one stone. He knew Issei was cunning, but he never expected to be this smart. However, he still had a few worries, which he voiced. "So how would you manage without using the boosted gear?" Drake asked, as Issei spoke. "Don't worry, I will be fine. I promise you that." Issei spoke, as he looked at Lavinia. If he was correct in his investigations, she was heading towards Kyoto, where her friend lives. Suzaku was pale. Knowing that Lavinia was going to visit her, she dreaded that Issei might hunt her down. The rest of Team /Dog and Grigori hoped that Issei does not harm or kill her. "Right on the mark, we will begin our attack soon," Issei spoke as he attached a voice modulator that allowed him to mimic the voice of Malik. This would allow Lavinia to be unable to detect. Issei jumped into the fray as Lavinia was heading towards the Himejima residence to meet her friend, Suzaku Himejima. "Such a shame, someone like you will fall tonight," Issei spoke in a metal and raspy voice, which was how Malik spoke to anyone he met. Lavinia was shivering. She never would imagine that Issei was the one she would fear. This was true with the people that were present. They never expected that one day Issei would be the one they fear. Even Nyx and Hades felt a shiver from this Issei. Seeing his ruthlessness showed that this Issei would be perfect, but they had to make sure that he was completely on their side. Meanwhile, Lavinia was walking to Suzaku's house. She wore a white sleeveless shirt, which had frills at the center, and a red tight pants. She also left her hair open and wore a headband. She wore red matching heels as she was walking towards the house. Dubio had a small blush looking at Lavinia like this, while some of the men were having smiles looking at Lavinia, while Lavinia herself was saddened, knowing what is going to happen to her. Someone she deemed as a friend wants her and her friend's dead, and she hated her counterpart for treating Issei like a garbage. Lavinia was walking towards the house when all of a sudden the dimension changed around her. She was surprised by this, wondering who was responsible for this. She noticed the dimension change was similar to that of the Longinus dimension lost, but with the change being that she seemed to still be in Kyoto, as she could see the people walking around her, but they were ignoring her or were walking above or below her. She seemed to be in some sort of a parallel reality. She would not have even realized the dimension changed around her had she not noticed the weird anomalies around her. She looked around, then she saw him, the bald man, with a metal plating on his face. She immediately recognized him and narrowed her eyes. A neutral expression grew on her face. "I presume you must be Maliki, right?" Lavinia asked in a cold tone, as Issei laughed in response. It seemed that the disguise worked perfectly. "Good afternoon, Miss Renai. Well, let's just say today I have decided to eliminate you since you are quite a problem to me and my plans," Issei spoke with a sly grin. "Oh no." Lavinia spoke with fear as Tobio held her hand in worry. He also hated what his counterpart did to Asile, and now they are suffering the consequences of their actions. Some of the audience wondered what will happen since Asile's power is primarily the boosted gear. They wondered what Issei is going to do with her, and what powers he would use against her. Valerie and Azazel prayed for Lavinia's survival, but they were worried on what Issei will do to her. Courteous, I was not expecting you to be like that, considering you massacred many innocent lives. Lavinia spoke with venom laced in her voice. Oh, don't be like that. Besides, they were too easy to kill, and the best part is that the leaders getting their pride crushed. You should have seen their faces. Issei spoke with a haughty tone. He remembered how Malik told him that their faces were disparate and infurious. Some were even fearful. Lavinia was getting angry at Malik's words. She was definitely going to make him pay for his actions. She was radiating with mana as she spoke. You bastard, didn't you have any empathy for their wives and children, or other family members? Lavinia shouted in rage as Issei chuckled. The audience was stunned by how cold and callous Issei had become. They were angered that despite what happened to this Issei, they still had the nerve to insult and harass him. This was the opposite of what they were doing if they wanted his help. Those that cared for Issei were beyond furious on seeing how much Issei had changed. Mary was livid seeing how Issei was changed because of some morons. That's not my problem. They were fools to defend their factions, Issei spoke while narrowing his eyes. Blind loyalty can be a problem. You must understand when it is right or when it is wrong. You really are a monster, Lavinia growled in rage. I am not even close for me to being a monster, Issei spoke with a smile as he continued. The only way to escape is by defeating me or I defeating you, but we all know what will happen, Issei spoke with a mocking tone. This is not going to end well, Lavinia spoke with sadness in her eyes, as Mary added. Indeed, my brother from another world is known to be ruthless as identified by his last fight. I wonder what he has plans for you. Lavinia Mary spoke with sadness. She hated the factions of this world that turned her brother into a monster, as Lavinia agreed to his words. Those that were present in Issei's previous fight against Rias and the residents of Hyoudou residents were fearful upon remembering this, especially Kiba and Rias, who dreaded what would happen if their Issei hunts them down. Don't underestimate me. I won't fall without a fight, and if possible, I will take you to the leaders. Lavinia declared. As I started to form where she was surrounding, she tried to intimidate Malik, who only chuckled. We will see about that, Lavinia Rennie, Issei responded in a mocking tone, ready to fight against the strongest ice princess. The audience were dreading this fight. While some were excited to see who will win, they were excited to see how well Issei would fight without the boosted gear. Lavinia knew that the man in front of her was not to be taken lightly, not because she knew if her prowess would not be enough, but she remembered how Mala humiliated Zeus and dared the king of Olympus to do something about it. She looked at her arms, not knowing whether she would even survive this fight, let alone win. But that did not mean that she was going to go down, not without a fight. Wait, he actually did that, Hades exclaimed with a surprised tone, as Revan nodded with and responded, Yep, he did that. Now you know why Zeus was so angry. Hades nodded. He was happy that his younger brother was humiliated so badly. He wanted to see if Issei would side with him. While Nyx wondered what else she could find about Issei, she clearly knew her counterpart liked him. However, this Nyx did not, while she did respect him for his nature. Despite this, she was wondering what else she could find about Issei. Absolute demise, Lavinia muttered. Moments later, a 3-meter ice stall had formed right behind Lavinia. She looked at Malik dead in the eye as she tried to scan his moments, wondering what move he will pull next. You think that a huge ice block will intimidate me? Issei spoke with an arrogant tone as Lavinia looked at Issei with anger in her eyes, but she reeled it in. It won't do her any good. In response she spoke. Some frowned at Issei's arrogance. However, they knew his power far eclipsed that of even Shiva, and they dreaded what was going to happen. Lavinia was herself fearful upon a confrontation between an aggressive version of Issei. Then come and fight me if you think it is just a huge ice block, Malak. Lavinia shouted in response as Issei responded. As you wish, Ice Princess. Issei rushed with his ignited red blade as Lavinia muttered. Cool. Lavinia instantly froze Malik inside of her ice prison. Malik seemed to be frozen in time as she then spoke. You will be questioned for what you have done, Malik, and your fate will be decided by the factions. Lavinia spoke coldly while approaching Malik. Is it over? Sergitius asked as some of the audience were hoping that it was over. They hoped that this Issei could get some real help since if done, he would have become a much better person in this world. Many of the others wanted to make D suffer if anything happened to his Issei. Some like Ingval glared at Reiju in anger, causing him to flinch as Crom spoke. I pity my counterpart stuck with that bastard. Tiamat responded in agreement. I couldn't agree any more. Rhea looked down in sadness and anger at his counterpart. He hated what he had done to her brother. Meanwhile, the hiatus watched and concerned seeing Issei in the state. They only could pray for Issei's safety. However, unbeknownst to Lavinia, Issei was waiting for her to approach her closely. He was internally smirked, as he thought. All according to Kakaku. Issei thought as he witnessed Lavinia coming close to him. Once she was close enough, she raised her hand to bring her eyes to bring the frozen block in a dimension where she could. Wait, absolute demise's ice is meant to be strong. How is he? Lavinia was about to ask when she realized that this Issei has access to a much stronger copy of her sacred gear. She was done for. She is his prey. Odin spoke with sadness, as those that were hoping it to be over now dreaded what Issei will do. Issei waited. Where his hands could reach Lavinia, she saw Malik being transported to a separate dimension. Once that was done, he broke the ice and grabbed Lavinia by the throat. Did you really think a mere ice block would stop me? Issei taunted Lavinia, who was struggling to breathe, as she muttered weakly, How? I don't think I need to tell you my abilities, and besides, a magician doesn't reveal his tricks, doesn't he? Issei spoke in a mocking tone as he flung Lavinia to a distance. The ice mage managed to recover, seeing that her plan of subduing Malik failed to work. If anything, this Issei is only playing with his prey. You will see that it is inevitable to fight against this Issei. Revan spoke, as Lavinia became even more fearful. The fear that was present from the start was magnifying in the audience. They knew this Issei was an utter monster, and with no sense of mercy. Lavinia managed to recover as she unleashed a storm of elemental spells. Several magic circles were brought out with Issei, recognizing them to be fire, electric, ice, dark and light magic. She then shouted, Take this. Lavinia released the magic as flames, lightning strikes, ice spears, squalls, arrows of light and finally balls of darkness were flung towards Issei. Before they could even hit him, Issei raised his hand, stopping every last one of them. My student just pulled the matrix. Azazel spoke with shock. Some of the audience couldn't deny that this move was just simply badass. The dragons in the room couldn't help but become proud of this move. He was truly unstoppable, while Lilith and Ophis were waving flags of Issei, expecting him to win, much to the ones sitting next to them's surprise. They must know something of this Issei that they don't. Impossible. How can you stop all these spells? Lavinia shouted in disbelief and anger. She looked at Malak, as he responded, Like I said before, a magician never reveals his secret. Issei used telekinesis to redirect the spells back at Lavinia, who had great difficulty blocking the attack even with several barriers to protect herself. He used my own spells against me. Lavinia spoke, to which Azazel asked, How did Issei earn such a strong spell? Like telekinesis is something that even the strongest magicians struggle learning, but he is able to learn it so flawlessly. Lavinia, LeFay and many magicians agree with this, as they knew it was so difficult for them to learn it properly. Revan then responded, While most of you were partying and supporting Dai, Issei learned this in secret, eventually mastering it with such high grace that not even the strongest of the magicians would ever succeed. It took him 1.5 years to properly use it. To this level, he started learning it before Trahixa was sealed. The audience were appalled by this. This Issei had been working for them, and they treated him so badly. They hated their counterparts for treating him like this and feared him now. Even Hades and Nyx were appalled by this as well. Once the dust settled, Lavinia was breathing heavily. She had several wounds on her body, due to what had happened, with some of the spells striking her back. Lavinia was pale seeing her condition like this, while some of the guests were pleading for Issei to not kill Lavinia. Amit, he blocked my attacks with one spell. I need to be careful, Lavinia thought with worry and fear. Not to mention, my mana was close to running out due to that attack. I seem to have only one choice, Lavinia thought while looking at the doll, who awaited her wielder's instructions. She had no choice. The ground beneath her froze, with Issei taunting her while maintaining his balance on the new icy ground. What's the matter? Ran out of spells, Ice Princess Issei taunted her mockingly. As Lavinia glared at him, she then retorted. I am not done yet, balance break. Asalito Argento Mondo, Lavinia chanted. Before anyone could react, the whole dimension changed, which creates a furious blizzard across an entire battlefield and innumerable giant sharp ice pillars able to turn the entire dimension into a world of ice at full strength. Maybe there is still a chance, Asia commented with hope, as her peerage had hoped that Lavinia would survive this Issei's rampage. Her balance breaker is one of the strongest, as she can easily go toe-to-toe with even the strongest of magicians. Baraquil added his own words as they all looked at the screen wondering what will happen next. Lavinia felt hope. Maybe, just maybe, she will be alive. Her teammates only had a little hope that she will come out of this alive. Shit, I never thought she would use balance breaker. I need to eliminate her quickly before revealing myself by using more of my powers. Issei thought with worry when he noticed Lavinia was missing. Now he was worried. He couldn't reveal more of his powers. He could create a sacred gear that could burn the ice around him, or simply use Dreg's flames to burn everything around him, but that would expose his identity. However, before Issei could react, the ice he was standing on suddenly started to rise. What the Issei exclaimed in surprise as 2 additional ice blocks rushed towards him. In an attempt to crush him, Issei responded by blocking the ice pillars with his telekinesis. It is true, my balance breaker lets me have absolute control of the ice world dimension I create. Lavinia spoke as the audience were amazed by this. She actually has a chance that against Issei. However, they know that he was holding back, meaning he was limiting herself so that his identity does not get exposed. They feared what would happen if he did not hold back, and this included Lavinia herself. Issei crushed the pillars as a voice boomed across the dimension. What's the matter, Malik? Did you get ice across your feet? The voice was that of Lavinia's, and she was mocking Malik. Issei was not happy with this. He was simply annoyed. Once inside her ice world, Lavinia is considered a sort of pseudo-goddess. He needed to find her to eliminate this world. You will never locate me. Lavinia mocked Malik. As he looked around, Issei responded to her. Don't you worry, you are somewhere in this world. Controlling the ice, Issei analyzed her sacred gear in order for him to identify its weaknesses. He knew that Lavinia is hidden somewhere trying to recover her mana, while her sacred gear was controlling the ice. He knew exactly what to do. Lavinia gulped in fear. She was afraid that Issei knows how he will be handling her. She feared on what plans Issei has for her. Even those from Team/Dog and Valerie team were fearful. Valerie mentally pleaded for Issei to not harm her in any way. Issei took a deep breath, as some more ice pillars and ice spikes charging at him. He closed his eyes and generated a telekinetic barrier, protecting himself. Meanwhile, he concentrated his telekinetic power inside his body as he continued to focus for a while at a single point. As this was going on, the ice was constantly being bombarded on the barrier as Lavinia shouted, Amit, get out of that prison, Malik, and face me. Malik only had a smile in response. He was done gathering the telekinetic energy needed. It was exhausting, but he had no choice. He had to do this if he needed to end this fight quickly. You will see a prospect of how strong his telekinesis is. Revan spoke with a smile, causing many to dread on this. They were seeing that Issei was gathering his telekinesis while Lavinia struggled to break the prison. Lavinia herself felt helpless knowing her demise was inevitable. Issei as Maliki will be claiming his first victim. Issei spoke in a neutral tone. As he opened his eyes, he had a small ball that looked like a drop-sized star in front of him. It was glowing with white light, as he looked at the ball and absorbed it into his body. Issei started to levitate in the air, as he spoke only in a low tone. Or pulse. Issei suddenly curled himself into a ball and exploded. A stream of telekinetic energy was sent towards the entire dimension, destroying and disintegrating every single ice that was found. Issei then jumped on the ground, which was now made of regular concrete. Holy shit! Azazel exclaimed. Even the others were appalled by how dangerous his repulse is, which can disintegrate the entire world of absolute demise like it was nothing. Lavinia was pale and amazed by seeing this level of magic that Issei had shown. It disintegrated the magic to nothingness. He was able to do so much damage in just a few minutes. This alone showed what he is capable of, and she dreaded it. The ice was completely destroyed, leaving a crippled doll, which was of absolute demise. Lavinia looked at horror. She tried to make her doll regenerate her ice, however, Issei exclaimed in response. I won't let you. Issei rushed to Lavinia, and before she could react, Issei stabbed her in the chest with his red blade as she had a look of horror. No, that was Lavinia's last words before the dimension returned to the one Issei had created. She fell on her knees. No, Valerie shouted, seeing Lavinia in the state. She was going to die right away, while Lavinia became as pale, seeing herself about to die by the hands of someone she thought as a friend. Valerie was crying, seeing that she was witnessing the death of her older sister figure, while Tobio clenched his fists in anger and sadness, along with Suzaku, Issei, while the rest of Team /Dog were angered and saddened seeing this. Why ice? Valerie spoke while crying. As Ingvild and Mary calmed her down, this event showed an evil Issei, and they all dreaded this version of Issei. Revan then spoke. Oh, I fear we are not done. Azazel looked at him in horror and asked in response, What do you mean by that? Just watch. Looking up, she saw Malik's eyes. She looked in those yellow eyes. They were completely soulless. Or that was what Lavinia saw. She feared those eyes. It was like staring at death itself. The audience agreed with Lavinia. It felt like staring at death itself. Even Hades, Crom and Nyx felt intimidated by this version of Issei. Where is all that bravado you once had? Seems like the Ice Princess has fallen, Issei taunted in a mocking tone. However, instead of being angry, Lavinia was scared. She was helpless. Her wound was too big, and she was out of mana. She could only be helpless in the eyes of her enemy. Her death seemed to be inevitable at this point. I am sorry, guys, I don't think I will come back from this one, Lavinia thought with sadness as a slight tear fell from her eyes. The factions watched helplessly as the death of one of their comrades was going to take place. Several were crying by what they were witnessing. They hated that their counterparts made Issei into a monster. Issei only looked at her with complete apathy and coldness and thought, You are right, you will not live through this. Issei removed his hand and started sucking out the life energy from her body. Another application of his telekinesis was that he can suck the life energy from a target's body. Her magic was already gone. She couldn't do anything about what was happening. At his life drain, he can suck out the life of his targets with his telekinesis. And Issei does not intend to kill Lavinia, yet Lavinia paled herself even more. She was even more fearful on what this Issei plans to do. Valerie watched in horror as she could see her sister suffer by Issei's hands, and there was nothing she could do about it. The others watched helplessly as Issei started to torment his prey very slowly. The audience wondered why he is even keeping her alive and not give her death. Could it be? Ijuka spoke, as Sosichus responded, What is it? When Issei shouted at Ingvild, he wanted them to suffer. I think that is why he does not want to kill her. He is keeping her on the verge of death so that we suffer. Ijuka's words made many of the guests horrified by this, as he wants them to suffer. Mary was horrified by Essie's plan. She knew he had problems, but this was something else. Many were actually scared of this Essie. Issei walked away as he spoke in a low tone. I hope this news finds you well, Valerie. Issei got out of there and restored the dimensions back to normal. He left as another person had come to check on Lavinia. Valerie could only imagine the dread her counterpart would be feeling. Same went for the rest of Team /Dog, all of whom knew the grief their counterparts would be feeling. They cried knowing that one of their friends were killed by their own pillar of that world. Now the scene will change to a few minutes before Lavinia's defeat. The factions wondered what remained now that they needed to see. Suzaku Himejima was a close friend of Lavinia's. She was worried that it has been a long time since she had not shown up. She called the others wondering where they were, but neither of them knew. Those that knew told her that she was coming to her place. She was described to look similar to her cousin Ikano, a beautiful, young, buxom woman who has long, flowing black hair and red eyes. She wore a red school uniform belonging to the school in Kyoto. Suzaku saw herself and knew what was going to happen. She hoped that she was not on Issei's hit list. Dobio held her hand in fear. He dreaded what Issei had planned for her as well. He did not want to watch another member of his team suffer a painful, agonizing defeat. Suzaku kept a hand on Tobio's hand, assuring him that she is all right. Suzaku crossed the streets as she noticed a barrier earlier, which regular people failed to notice. She rushed, worrying something was wrong while making sure that no one was watching her. When she got to the location, she kept her hands on her mouth in horror. She saw her friend unconscious with an injury aimed at her chest. Lavinia's heartbreaking scream was heard, and this was from Suzaku. She was crying endlessly while trying to wake her friend up. She was trying to find anything that could help her, but she failed to do so. Suzaku dreaded the condition of her counterpart. She feared Issei's change in attitude and could only hope that her counterpart does not suffer like Lavinia did. What did our counterparts do to make us experience his wrath? Tobio asked with curiosity and anger in his voice, but there was also sadness in it, knowing that it must have been really bad for him to do that. It is because of you listening to Azazel that this happened. This is how manipulative the riot of this world is. You all fell for it. Tobio nodded as he became angry at this. While Azazel was livid at his counterpart, while Raya was saddened by his counterpart's actions, he was angered by how far he had fallen. Issei watched the scene with his drones. He looked at Suzaku, calling for others to help her in the situation. I seem to have underestimated her usage of her sacred gear. This was an unknown variable, never thought she could hide herself. Issei spoke with a cold tone, but at the same time, he had a bit of anger. His underestimation of her could have potentially exposed him. Issei walked away and he recalled his drones. He teleported back to his room to avoid suspicion. He is treating everything like an experiment. Is that how he deals with his enemies? Ijuka asked, to which Revan responded. Indeed, he is known for using calculations and predictions. Any unknown variable is also accounted for. The audience were surprised by this level of ingenuity, while Azazel and Ijuka knew that this Issei was extremely capable of doing serious damage with some calculations. And now they have witnessed it as well. Now this scene will take a few days after the attack. The audience nodded, with some of them dreading the aftermath on what Lavinia's situation will be. They hoped for her being alive. The scene changes to a few days. Later the factions got the news of Lavinia's condition, and they were in a critical state. If anything, many dreaded what Maliki would do next, especially the Grigori, as they started to initiate even more defenses. Lavinia was in a comatose state, due to magical exhaustion, as well as her life force drain. The doctors estimated her that she only has a few years before she passes away. They estimated that she only had 5 years at most. This was a huge blow to Team/Dog, especially to Tobio and Suzaku, who cared for her like their very own. Suzaku blamed herself for not protecting her friend from Maliki. But not even they could imagine who was affected the most. And that was Valerie Lucifer. She saw Lavinia as an older sister and mentor figure. She was shattered when she heard the news of Lavinia's condition and broke down. She couldn't handle that her sister would be gone in just 5 years. She was grief-stricken. The audience were devastated by Lavinia's fate. With Lavinia herself was crying, seeing what her fate was be. It was truly a fate worse than death itself. The only ones that did not care for Lavinia were Nyx and Hades, both of whom were neutral seeing what had happened, while Tiamat and Crom felt a little bad for Lavinia. While they were horrified by Issei's actions, Tiamat felt a little fear knowing this Issei they knew was not the same, and that alone either saddened or happy by what happened to. However, there was one person who was unaffected by the news. That of course was who spoke. Damn it. I hate Grom. Always hides behind the wall and takes my brawler down. Issei got up and started walking outside the room. As he opened the door suddenly exploded due to a magic attack. What the Issei looked at the direction from where the attack came. However, before he could continue speaking, someone started to attack him. Issei dodged it as he saw his attacker to be Vali. Oh dear, not again. Valir Fossapilin did this. She hasn't learned from last time. She knew she was going to get hurt again. Azazel and those that cared for her knew she was going to suffer again. What's your deal? Issei exclaimed with anger. However, Vali ignored him. She kept punching as he kept dodging the attacks. Stop attacking me. Issei spoke with an annoyed tone. If you had given us the information about Malik, Lavinia wouldn't be in this condition, Valerie shouted angrily while tears fell from her eyes. Issei kept dodging the attack while responding. Like I said, not my monkeys, not my circus, you are on your own in this fight. Issei kept dodging as Vali shouted in response. You have a book that can recreate any sacred gear. You should use this power to save innocent lives, Valerie shouted in pure fury. With tears falling from her eyes, she did not stop punching, however. Valerie gritted her teeth. How could they not see how much they have harmed to Issei, yet they expected him to help her? Even those that cared for were angered by this iteration of Valerie, while Crom and Tiamat were also angry seeing this. They did not care for him, yet they demand his help. They have no right to do so in any way. I have had enough. Issei grabbed both of Valerie's hands, shocking her as he flung her in the air. He then kept punching her with his lightning slayer gloves, with each blow dealing massive damage to her stomach. Valerie coughed up saliva at every punch. As she was in midair, Issei responded by giving her a roundhouse kick to her face, sending her flying across the residence, knocking her out cold. Valerie was pale by this. She has not learned her lesson. She could only mutter one thing: idiot. People change for two reasons. Issei looked across. Most, minus Guru and Mickey, were ready for a fight. They had unpleasant expressions, however. Most of them even had fear in their eyes. Issei then continued. One is by change of heart or mind, and the main trigger is that all it needs is one bad experience to do so. Ingvild listened to every word Issei said. She remembered his words that he will one day burn everything she held dear. But that is the problem. She barely had anyone. Her parents died a long time ago. Her father, Lucius, was also killed by the old Satan faction, and ever since then, she lived in Grigori. After that she was kidnapped, and well, the rest is history. Ingvild looked down, remembering her past. She shared the same past as her counterpart did. Mary calmed her down as she knew it must have been a dark past. Many of the guests felt pity for Ingvild, while Nyx hardly cared for her. She hated that this brought back memories of a brutal loss at Issei's hands, who almost killed her during their confrontation. She hated herself. She wished she could go in the past and make her realize her biggest mistake, but that is not going to happen. And then there was D, who was her king, physical and mental moral support. But it turned out he was a fraud. She hated D more than she hated herself, for fooling her. But at the same time, she lost the only person that loved her. Now he was no longer going to help her, even from the shadows. She wanted to go back in time, but at the same time, she made a mental vow. She was going to let his Issei accept her one day, no matter what happens. Ingvild frowned at her counterpart's thought process, thinking that she can prevent a repeat of a mistake as she spoke. If she thinks that going back in time is going to help, then she is dead wrong. Valerie responded with agreement as she spoke. I totally agree with that. Is it perhaps you want to stay with your arms crossed and let us all suffer while watching from the sidelines? Azazel spoke in a serious tone. When you can do so much good while helping us. Azazel could not complete as Azazel stabbed him in the chest before the fallen angel could react. When he looked down, he saw fury in Azazel's eyes. You take me for a fucking weapon, Azazel. That you can use and discard whenever the hell you feel like it. I am not some sort of weapon or a sacred gear that you can use and throw away whenever you want. I know of your dislike towards me when you yourself fell because of your lust. Issei shouted, anger evident in his eyes. He removed the blade as it was revealed to be the mortis blade. Azazel coughed up blood. A simple stab should not be able to do this much damage. You idiot. Azazel wanted to crush his counterpart's head as he was only provoking him even further. He hated his counterpart even more at this point. He paled upon being stabbed by the mortis blade, which was caused because of his stupidity. Many of the leaders were aware of this and wanted to give their counterparts a reality check. They hated them even more now. But Azazel tried to retort. However, Issei was not having any of that. I have been Isseiing this time and time again. Hand over next to me, and I will gladly give the information. But Nu, you believe that you are entitled to receive my help just because I know about the supernatural. Furthermore, I am the Red Dragon Emperor, so you think that I should help you guys. But no. I won't help you, not until I expect something in return. Issei declared as he released Azazel, who clutched his wound while gritting his teeth. He glared at Issei. He wanted to throw a light spear, but he does not know what he will do to him. If he attacks him, he might meet the same fate as Valerie. Hades, Nyx, and some of the audience were excited for a scuffle, but in reality is going to be a one-sided slaughter, especially with his parents being involved. The ones present in the theater dreaded what Issei has planned for their counterparts in the fight. It is just that you don't want to help with that power of yours. Dai spoke in a cold tone towards his brother. Ingvild glared at Dai for saying that, who smirked in response. Indeed, I don't desire to do so. Issei started to head out, as Mickey and Goro opened their mouths. We did not raise a monster. You should help others, Issei, that was the son we raised. Goro, Mickey and Ryu hated their counterparts, hated on how they are gaslighting Issei at this point. They hated on how callous they were towards their own son-brother. Mary was beyond livid at this, as she knew that Issei had a good reason to not help them, and now they are annoying and gaslighting him to help them. If anything, I won't be surprised if Issei kills these two idiots at this point. Hades commented, much to the many of the faction's anger, as Nick spoke. I agree, and getting rid of those two will soon come since they have no redeeming qualities. He will put them 6 feet under if they tried any funny business. They soon lost their anger and became fearful on what Nyx had to Issei for them. They dreaded on what Issei will be doing to them due to his natural hatred for them. Issei started laughing, shocking and angering both of his parents. He calmed down for a while. Yes, I am a monster, and you know what monsters do. They do this. Issei dashed towards Azazel and Valir, each of his hands grabbing them by their necks as he started to choke them. Azazel struggled to free himself from Issei's grip. He tried to bring out a light spear, but Issei increased the force of hand, forcing to try to make himself release from the grip. This is what a monster will do. I will kill these two right here and right now. Valerie and Azazel were horrified by this, while those that cared for them were even more shocked by this. Issei did not care if he was called a monster. If anything, he loved being called one. He is not even pulling his punches on this one. If he wants you dead, he will kill you and do anything for that. Arthur's words made them dread on what plans to do with him. They were truly scared of their pillar, and what he is capable of. They knew that if wanted to, he could have done some serious damage to them. Words made many horrified on what he will do next, as Aika and Rios shouted. Let them go, brother. Issei Hyoudou, you better let go or else I will call my big brother. Issei turned his attention to them and activated a sacred gear that can disrupt all communications. He called it the short circuit. No. Go ahead. I dare you two to do something about this. It won't take me a minute to kill these two right away. The audience truly started to fear Issei. If he wanted to put them in their places or kill them, he could train himself off and do so. Issei's growth is not something that should be ignored. He went from someone that was weak to even the weakest of devil children, to someone who could take down a primordial. He even had designed sacred gears to disrupt communication against them, and they truly were afraid by this. Issei taunted in a mocking tone, as Rias tried to communicate to her brother, but was horrified when she couldn't reach him, as Issei spoke. The person you are trying to reach is currently busy, Issei spoke with a mocking tone. Oh, it seems like your older brother doesn't have time for you. Raiden spoke with a fake sadness. Rias was shivering in fear, knowing this would not hesitate to put her 6 feet under. Surzex and the rest of his family were fearful of what this plans to do. Malikas was scared now. His hero turned into the biggest villain seemed to be straight out from a horror story. He also started to fear this Issei and what he intends to do with them. It was no secret he hated them and will not hesitate to kill them if they wanted to. Rias looked at him in fear. She was shivering, almost on the verge of passing out due to fear. She was helpless. Issei can kill them and leave no trace of them. Same went for Rias Peerage. They were all afraid. Issei can take her down, and her brother won't even realize it until it is too late. Aika, you were saying to release them, but you can't do anything to stop me, can you? Aika spoke with a taunt. After all, you are nothing but all bark, but no bite, such a shame. Aika gritted her teeth with fury, while Di was equally angry. However, he was fearful on what Aika will do next. Attack me again and I will join Malik myself. Issei's words made many horrified as he continued. I can destroy Malik like an ant if I wanted to, and I am your last and only hope in defeating him. I will ask him to join and I will start destroying the factions myself alongside him. Just think of your only last hope turning into your worst enemy. Just imagine what can happen," Issei declared with an evil and sinister grin. And that is what happened. Sona Citri spoke with fear, instilling fear into most of the audience, as Sigvra responded, "All because we were unable to see the reality of a fraud. We fell for his lies." Riser has a feeling that Riser must have done something really bad to Hyoudou. This is not good. Riser's words made his peerage fearful. They knew Issei's strength, and it was only expanding. They wondered if their Issei will have hatred towards them for their past misdeeds or not. They truly now fear Issei. The factions realize this is their worst-case scenario. With Issei gone to the enemy side, they are so done for. He wants them eliminated, and will do anything in his power to do so. Issei's words made many fear him even more. Some of the weaker-willed, including his parents, passed out due to fear. He then dropped Azazel and Valerie. As Azazel tried to catch his breath, he then left the room as he was not interested in dealing with them. Issei walked away, far from them. Many tried to help Valerie. They were happy that she was breathing, with Azazel speaking in a serious tone after catching his breath. "We need to tell this to your brother that Issei won't hesitate to become our enemy if we attack him, but first we need to get Valid to somewhere safe. She needs treatment." Many nodded as they started to get to work. Ika and Dee helped their parents with Dee vowing to one day take his power and torture him for all eternity. "I can't wait for Issei to put them in their place as much as we fear him, that is," Mary spoke angrily. It was her brother that turned him into a monster, and he was going to make sure that he ruins him completely. "I couldn't agree anymore," Valerie spoke angrily after calming down. They really hate Dee at this point, and could care less if something bad happens to him, or her dies. Issei was sipping a bottle of Diet Coke. As he looked on in anger, he enjoyed their fears in their hearts as he was thinking on his next plan of attack. Even though Malik was strong enough to take on a single faction, multiple factions attacking together could overwhelm him. Plus, Essie knew that now the security would be tightened due to the attack on Lavinia. It will be harder for him to attack the factions. He's decided to change tactics. He needed more information on the security systems of each of the factions. Then there was the Greek and Hindu factions, two of the biggest threats he will have to deal with. He barely had any information on the Hindu faction, only their names. He needed to collect information on the Hindu faction. Although not as strong as Great Red or Office, Issei knew that Shiva, Brahma and Vishnu were forces to be reckoned with. Their strength surpassed Sursages from a long mile. And then there is several other gods like Indra, who is as strong as Sursages, if not much stronger. "I am so glad that they are not here in the theater right now," Sursages spoke with a sigh. "If they think of Issei as a threat, they will not hesitate to kill him." However, they wondered whether Issei could take them down or not. If they did, he would be someone that not even the gods could defeat. "Yeah, I know, if anyone could beat this Issei, it could be these three, I think at least." Thor added his own words. He knew if Issei turned evil, they are one of the few people that can take him down. "I plan to bring them sometime in the future to this theater. But worry not, they won't harm Issei, as there are many present that have taken down the Trimurti and are strong enough to wipe out the entire Hindu faction if they wanted to," Revan spoke, remembering several Isseis that are powerful enough to do just that, and they are present in the theater. They don't take any bullshit from anyone and will take them down if they tried anything. That alone made the audience even more fearful. If the strongest gods can't do anything against him, then he is truly unstoppable. Nobody except for Great Red or Office can stop him. Meanwhile, Office and Lilith smiled meeting some of them, as many cared for them, some were hostile towards them, as in those realities their counterparts had betrayed Issei, and in retaliation, Issei managed to kill them and become unstoppable. As for the Greek faction, he needed to deal with Zeus and Poseidon, although they aren't as strong as Hades, who could beat them in a long mile. They were still pretty strong, he needn't underestimate them. And finally, the Norse faction, who had Thor, Odin and Vidor, three people who could give a run for his money. Those were the people, so far he found out, that he needed to be careful of, aside from Sursages, Ijuka and several others. He is calculating on those that will become a problem. Ijuka spoke in a serious tone. As Odin responds, he knows that some of us can become a problem and is taking measures accordingly. Hades smiled at Issei, this Issei that was, who knew that how strong he was and what he is capable of. Revan smiled, looking at Hades, knowing that he is going to receive his biggest surprise in this chapter. Hey Drake, Issei asked his best friend with the boosted gear, speaking up. You better give me a good reason, you ruined my sleep. I was finally gonna get laid. Drake spoke while comically crying. As Issei's sweat dropped, he gave his friend a moment, and then spoke. Yumit had a frown seeing this. She had feelings for that dragon at one point, but he ignored her. As a result, she had no feelings for him. Crom looked at her and made a silent sigh. Dreg was never good with women. Albion agreed with his rival mentally, as even he never got laid. He hated how people were afraid of them, then to leave them alone. Majority of the audience sweat dropped like Issei did. They also had to agree that this was really something. They never thought that the Welsh dragon, someone that they feared, would have such thoughts. I was wondering that since our fight is tougher, how are we going to gather information? Asked. Well, you could infiltrate the factions or you can have others do the job for you now. Let me go to sleep. Drake spoke, not caring for the factions anymore. He hardly could feel anything for them given how much they looked down upon his best friend. Issei thought of the proposal. He then spoke in response. Oh yes, I can go for those 3. Issei thought with a malicious grin. He remembered 3 people that could be perfect infiltrators. They were. The audience was fearful on the 3 victims that Issei had planned for. They wondered who he is going to go for, and what his plans for them are. Fucking ring ring ring. An unknown voice came. He then sensed his phone vibrate as he looked at the caller ID and started to sweat. A high Essie spoke, slightly nervous, as a woman's voice came from the speaker. Essie, where have you been? You haven't contacted me and my husband since a long time. The woman exclaimed with faint sadness. Hades had a jaw drop when he heard this voice. He knew who it was as he muttered, I can't be. The audience looked at Hades in surprise. They never saw the god of underworld act like this. They knew something has to be off for this to happen, as Revan smiled, knowing who exactly it was. Some of the guests had a feeling that the voice is familiar. I am so sorry, I just had a lot of work to do. Issei spoke, trying to explain himself to the woman. As the woman spoke. Well, I am happy that you finally decided to take some time off from your busy schedule. The woman spoke with a slight happiness tone. I know, I really am sorry. Issei spoke with slight sadness. It almost felt like Issei cared for this person. She seems to care for my little brother a lot, Mary commented as she looked at Hades's dazed face. She was surprised to see why the underworld god was like that. Many wondered who this woman was and why Issei cared for her so much. Some wondered whether she was another lover of his. The girls that loved Issei hoped it to not be true. Either way, when are you coming to visit us? The woman asked, as Issei responded. I can come right away if you want me to. Issei spoke with a beaming smile. That's good. I would definitely prepare you a feast, young man. The woman beamed with happiness. Issei responded, I am looking forward to that. The woman then asked, so for long you will stay here? The woman asked, a week, and besides my family doesn't care if I am even away for a year. Essie spoke, as the woman responded with an assuring tone, but we do, both me and my husband do, so you can come here whenever you can. Hades had a tearful from his eye when he heard who she was. He remained silent upon hearing that voice once again. She was alive in this world, unlike hers. Nyx noticed this and asked silently, who is she? Hades did not respond as he remained silent. Issei spoke with a genuine smile, a smile that hasn't been seen for a long time. Well, then see you at your place, Persephone. I sigh. Persephone greeted cheerfully as she disconnected the call. The audience were stunned by this revelation. They remembered that she had died by the hands of a Longinus user, and her soul was stated to be destroyed. Many still remembered that Hades was not the same after that, as Azazel responded, no way isn't she supposed to be dead. She is in your timeline, however not in this one. How she is alive will be explained in the next chapter. Revan spoke as the audience nodded. Nyx now understood why Hades was crying. He missed his wife even to this day. Some of the audience pitied Hades, while many were still angry at what Hades had done in the past since his actions did indirectly kill Issei once before. Issei felt at ease. He headed back inside to pack, drag, then spoke in a cheerful tone. It feels nice to hear from her, partner. Yeah, well, let's not keep her waiting and head to prepare ourselves. I guess it is nice of you to have that smile of yours. Dreg spoke in a cheerful as he deactivated the gear. He headed to his room and packed his stuff. He was about to head out when Issei can't even have peace at his own home. Yasaka spoke with a frown as the residents of the Hyoudou residence looked down in shame and sadness. Seeing how much damage they did to Issei, it was no wonder why he drastically had changed. Where are you going? A voice spoke with a hint of fear came from outside his door. Issei turned to who it was and narrowed his eyes. It was Asia that called him. Where I go is none of your concern. You can leave if you want to, Issei spoke with spite. He was annoyed that she were in such a good mood of his. Issei, wait, your mom Asia could not complete as Issei had already left to the realm of the undead. Mickey looked down in sadness seeing that her own son does not want to be in the place of his own home. She was weeping with Goro, the Gremry family and her two siblings calming her down. Issei couldn't even stay in his own house without being scrutinized. Asia also looked sad and seeing the hatred in Issei's eyes, she was fearful on what Issei has planned for her counterpart. Asia was left flabbergasted, she only could tell everyone that Issei has left. She knew that Issei will not be back for a while. Nobody knew where he was going on, nobody but Issei and Drake. Issei watched as he was being teleported to the realm of the dead as he looked across and was happy to visit Persephone and Hades once again. Issei was excited to see them again. I can't wait to see what they have in store for me. Alright, that's it for the viewing now. I'd Issei you all should head to the cafeteria to have dinner. We will begin the final viewing after that for the day. Revan suddenly got a message as he suddenly spoke towards Ingvild and Mary. Could Mary and Ingvild wait for a moment? The two looked at Revan and asked, What is the matter? Mary asked with confusion, to which Revan spoke, I am going to let the two of you meet and Issei, right now if you want, that is. Both Mary and Ingvild went wide-eyed, while the rest remained baffled. Yusaku voiced her concerns. Why not us? I will speak his own words. Yasaka Revan brought a magic circle. As they recognized the voice, it was none other than Issei. Revan, can you bring Mary, me and Ingvild here? I don't trust the others anymore. Not after hearing those that have been betrayed by the factions, and especially keep those heathens far away from me, because if they don't, I will destroy every last one of them. Those, he is referring to other alternate versions of himself. The audience was crestfallen by this, except Tiamat, Crom, Nyx, Hades, Mary and Ingvild, out of which the latter two felt bad for the ones that supported him. Hades and Nyx seemed content with the trust issues he has. He would become a valuable ally. Not to mention his anger is something that even scared Hades and Nyx. Both Tiamat and Crom frowned. They knew exactly why Issei is like this. Tiamat could relate to Issei to some extent. She also had a similar feeling of trust after a very long time. Those that cared and or loved Issei were heartbroken by this lack of trust he had for them. Some were even crying because of this. The factions and those that betrayed Issei were completely fearful. They were already affected by what happened in this chapter. They knew he was getting stronger as time passed, and they were afraid of what he is capable of. They knew that he must not be messed with. The leaders looked at each other. They had to plan on how they should be dealing with the Issei. Revan then spoke. Now I would Issei the rest of you should head to the cafeteria, minus Ingvild and Mary. Revan spoke seriously, causing the rest to reluctantly to leave. Some helped the ones devastated to the cafeteria. Alright, I will be teleporting you two to him, so I would Issei be ready. The two girls nodded in agreement as they were soon teleported to his room. They left, leaving Revan alone, who spoke with a sigh. Now to locate those souls that were killed by the factions of that universe, Revan muttered as he teleported out of there, leaving the theater empty. Thanks for listening to my video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe and comment below your favorite part. Don't forget to support the author and his story in the description. Sayonara, see you in the next video.